She was born into a family consisting of a mom, dad, and two brothers, ages 7 and 10. She was unexpected. Mom went to the doctor thinking she had an ulcer. She was pregnant. They were thrilled to finally have a girl. There was so much affectionate love for her. There was also quite a bit of anger in the family, especially in her dad and oldest brother. Overall, she experienced much love and, at the same time, much emotional abandonment and anger. With the big age gap between her and her brothers, she ended up living a great deal of her older childhood and teenage years as an only child. Her parents were always stressed and wanted to be left alone. She was expected to serve them, clean the, clean the kitchen, wash the clothes, even wash her brother's clothes when they returned home for a visit, and clean up the kitchen after a big family meal, while the rest of the family sat and visited in the living room. Her mom only cooked when her brothers returned home. She fended for herself the rest of the time, eating cereal or granola bars. This is where the food and sugar addiction set in, as it was her only comfort. And it helped push down that lump in her throat that wanted to cry, but that wasn't allowed. She was her mom's Barbie doll. As a young child, she endured sleeping in pink foam curlers every Saturday night so she could walk into church on Sunday morning and be awed at by the congregation. How she looked was very important to her parents, a direct reflection of them, no doubt. She was a little chubby, and this concerned her mother. She heard her mother talking to friends about her daughter's weight problem. At 6 years old, she was put on a diet. In the 6th grade, she was elected to the private school's homecoming court. Her mom made her wear a girdle under her dress, and she had to put that on in a locker room full of other girls and teenagers. She was constantly told how beautiful she was, yet she knew she was always close to the line of not measuring up. Her parents were from an era where men protected and saved the damsel in distress. Consequently, she was hardly ever allowed to go anywhere with just girlfriends. Her escape from the house had to involve a male. Unknowingly, she began finding her worth based on whether she was in a relationship with the male, and she desperately wanted to be saved from her own heartache of loneliness and not enoughness. She became enmeshed with her partners. She remembers a teacher in high school trying to talk with her about being her own person and not just following whatever her boyfriend liked and did. But she couldn't hear how her teacher was attempting to guide her. All she truly wanted was to be married and have several kids. She longed to be a mom. She would be so different from her own parents, so she thought. In some ways, she was. However, so much anger and hurt was buried deep inside her. It came out as rage, sometimes erupting from the smallest of provocation. She was both super loving and someone to be wary of. She carried so much shame and self-hatred because of this, so much judgment. What she was missing, what she needed most, did not come from another person. Even though she began a 12-step program for people from dysfunctional families, read self-help books, and even began counseling, She longed to feel loved and accepted by a partner. 2 marriages and a couple of significant relationships were the carnage of her inner war. And then the great sadness occurred. The sacred contract between her and another was fulfilled. She finally connected with a man who was a recovering addict. He understood so much of her heart, her hurts, her struggles. They began as friends and grew into best friends. Surprising her the most, she left her marriage to be with him. At that point, she was the homeschool Catholic mom with 6 kids. From the outside in, perhaps the marriage looked perfect to some. She looked crazy for leaving. She was going crazy, staying. She was losing herself more and more every day, trying to be something, but what? Something that she wasn't. It was a devastating shock to her family. She hated hurting them, yet she could not stay. But that was just the beginning. 20 months after leaving the marriage and joining with her best friend, her best lover, he killed himself. Several months before this, he had begun drinking again. The addiction was a bastard. Her whole life stopped. Her heart was cracked open. She was a single mom, struggling to survive on a public school teacher's salary. The entire small town knew of her fall, her failure. It was as if she wore the scarlet letter A on her forehead, and now an additional letter, S, for suicide survivor, causer. Totally abandoned, alone. Each day she would reluctantly wake up, go through the motions of working so she wouldn't lose her house and could feed her children. And she would make it to the end of the workday and completely lose it when she came home, crashing emotionally, craving death. Her children would most likely be better without her. Their dad was the good guy, the saint. The thing that kept her from killing herself is the immense pain she felt from her love killing himself. She couldn't do that to her children. The gig was up. It was time to dive deep. In her greatest desperation, she cried out to Spirit, "Please, just show up." And Spirit did. She dove into various kinds of self-study. A scripture-based Joyce Meyer study of Isaiah about finding freedom. An online OM course called Break the Grip of Past Lovers. And a local non-denominational church. She was open to healing wherever she could find it. She began working with a life coach, Coach B, and the next journey of her healing opened before her. Coach B's unconditional love and non-judgment while working with her in hypnotism eventually led to her going to an intense retreat in the North Georgia mountains called the Wild Emergence. This is what gently at first and then powerfully broke her open. She began to see herself with more clarity, and it was intensely painful. Her ego was revealed. The woundedness of her little girl was exposed. It felt awful. Yet, simultaneously, she was surrounded with unconditional love and support. She had found her people, and at the same time, she knew she was on a journey that only she could maneuver. The journey into herself. The journey to completely love herself. The Wild Emergence in the Georgia mountains. That is where she faced herself even deeper. During the butterfly exercise, she faced the fugly of all that she had been, and the beautiful good of all that she is. She remembered who she was for the first time. She worked through it until it came to her. She was a powerful, intuitive, authentic high priestess. Until her mid-50s, she had lived at such a low vibration of shame, unbelief, and unworthiness, all the while faking that she was okay and that she could do whatever task was before her, striving and trudging forward, while inside feeling so low and empty. Previously only living on shoulds, now she began, for the first time, tapping into her feelings, her true feelings, breathing in space, checking in with herself, feeling and trusting her intuition, that part of her that connected with spirit. A huge shift occurred in her psyche. She always knew something burned deeply within her. It was her remembering who the fuck she was. And fire really began resonating with her in a deeply spiritual way. Her religious Baptist upbringing felt so strict. Her courageous conversion to Catholicism as an adult was one step closer to moving outside of the box, strange as that may sound. Yes, as a practicing Catholic, she had many rules to adhere to, but also many rituals. She had lived as the best Catholic she could until she couldn't, until she blew up her life through adultery and divorce and couldn't receive communion anymore. Now what? That was the crumbling tower that revealed what was left in the ashes: her soul, her spirit, her ability to truly connect with spirit outside of any patriarchy. She began giving herself permission to realign her vision of herself, letting go of all the outer expectations she always felt others had of her. She realized the fear with which her spirituality had always been infused: fear of failure, fear of screwing up, fear of separating herself from spirit. Her entire spiritual journey had led her to this place of freedom, even freedom from religion and all the shoulds she had previously held. She encountered two dark nights of the soul a little way along her new path. It was then that she learned about the witch wound, this fear that she was doing something dreadful because the masses didn't understand or approve of her connection with spirit. How she connected looked too different for some people's comfort. It was truth time. What did she truly believe? What was her satya, her truth? Was she going to continue to live inauthentically just to receive other people's approval? Would she be governed for the rest of her life by fear? Or was her relationship with spirit so sweet that it was worth losing other people's approval, most of which didn't even matter anyway? Her new destination was no longer obtaining heaven after death or receiving approval day to day. It was authentic connection with Spirit and with herself. Spirit was showing up every day in such sweetness. Spirit lived within her. There was no separation. What a shift. Everything was connected. She was the drop of water in the whole ocean of God. She was connected to nature, to everyone, to every experience, to everything that happened. She began shifting every day from victimhood to empowerment. She reminded herself that all happens for her, not to her. The big wow was, who was she to tell anyone else how they were supposed to connect with God or Spirit, or even how to connect with themselves? And how could anyone else tell her how she was best to connect with Spirit and God? She began to see herself as connected to all beings, all creations, even Spirit herself. She began to speak of God as Spirit or Great Spirit because of all the baggage that came with her previous understanding of God. She always knew that God wasn't male or female. Life became more beautiful everywhere. Unconditional love became what she breathed into her soul and body every morning. She breathed out shame and judgment. She touched freedom. She became drawn to the night sky. Many early mornings she arose to sit under the stars, to bathe in their vastness. She learned that humans are made up of the same elements as the stars. Everything was so much bigger and, at the same time, more connected than ever before. Her entire foundation of belief shifted from victim to empowered being. She believed in God and in Jesus and his power and love. However, she did not see herself as a victim of her circumstances. She saw the connection between her faith and her high vibration, manifestation, and healing. She saw herself cooperating with Spirit, not sitting in a puddle on the floor crying out to Spirit to save her. She didn't believe that Jesus came to establish a new religion, but that he came to show how to be connected to Spirit. She saw, felt, experienced her own empowerment by connecting with Spirit. She felt this more intensely when she was in nature. She was a powerful, intuitive, authentic high priestess. Freedom. Attracting healing and positive results via trust, unattachment, and connection. Body, mind, and soul. Allowing while trusting. Her understanding of religion, spiritual truths, herself, all people, and all circumstances became more united. There was no separation, only unity.